Hello, everyone. We will continue with the supply risk management. Let's see very prominent supply risk type examples, cases, or in the past in supply chain domain, how very many events have occurred, like, very many risky events have occurred, which has impacted the supply chain and you can say the buying organizations, right? So when we talk about supply uh, related risk, these days, maybe due to climate change or you can say, the natural disruptions, right? It has a cascading effect on the whole supply chain, right? The very famous examples in the past, very they are known events have occurred. For example, there was a fire in one of the uh, big giant Japanese auto manufacturers suppliers facility, right? And just imagine, because of that fire, the fire at suppliers premises have resulted in shutdown of 18 plants of this auto giant, right, nearly for 2 weeks. Now you can imagine that the revenue loss, the production loss for one day itself is such a huge number, right? And when if plant has to be shut for 2 weeks, one can imagine the loss. And very the loss can be in terms of financial aspect, right? We have already seen the definition of risk, which is a likelihood of an event and its impact. Now its impact can be in terms of financial performance, right? So or maybe the financial indicator. Now you see that for this example, like for this Japanese auto giant, there was a estimated operational cost was $195 million. And it's not only that, because when you are not able to operate, for few days, for weeks, there is a risk of losing customers also. That is also a huge impact, in terms of losing a customer, losing sale, losing potential buyers, right? That's also a very prominent impact, due to risky events. The other very known example in this risk field is, like, when a high voltage electric line was struck by lightning, that resulted in fire in one of the major wafer fabrication supplier. So this supplier was, like, in 2000s, this supplier was you can say a kind of monopoly supplier, or the only supplier who would supply, like, specialized products or wafer fabrication related products to major giants like Nokia and Ericsson, right? So when this fire occurred, the this wafer fabrication facility, even they could not assess that what would be the impact of this fire, how long it will take, to revive, how long it will take, to again start the production. So when they themselves were not able to assess, they were not able to communicate, properly with their buyers. That is, like, the mobile handset manufacturer, or we can say mobile handset assemblers. So those assemblers were really affected. They were completely unaware of, like, this disruptive situation at their supplier. So because of this risky event, one of the buyer kept on waiting, to hear from this wafer fabrication supplier, right? But other buyer, they took proactive action. They actually had a meeting with the supplier. They could help to some kind of predict, the severity of risk, and they took proactive action in changing either, the design of the fabrication related product they needed, and they requested the supplier to manufacture it to other plant of the supplier. So in this way, buyer one was able uh, to somehow handle the situation. No doubt it was definitely incurred a huge loss, but buyer two kept on waiting because neither the supplier nor this buyer two was able to assess the situation, right? So in reality, it took weeks and months, like for the wafer fabrication facility to revive, and with this result, buyer two resulted in loss of $200 billion to one of the this buyer two is nothing but again another mobile phone manufacturer or handset manufacturer. So one can see that here again we would reiterate that same risky event you know can impact differently to different supply chain entities. Hence, it is very important first to realize, the type of risk, right, to which stakeholder it can impact, right, and what is the severity, and the impact can be different for different supply chain entities. These are very known examples in the supply domain. Another issues can be the quality risks, right? So we have been seeing in news that in recent past also many auto giants, like they had to recall their auto vehicles, like uh, because of many reasons, right? So one could be malfunctioning of brake paddle. So you see here, this is a malfunctioning of brake paddle designed by one of the key supplier of this Japanese automotive manufacturer, right? So this malfunctioning could have happened at the supplier facility, but it just passed through the supply chain and reached to customer. So because of this, the auto giant has to recall the vehicles, and it resulted in the loss of $2 billion to the company. But this is not the only loss. The moment any recall happens, like there is a trust and the loss of trust of customer and loss of reputation. So many other risks also originate from one type of risk, right? So the risk of, like malfunctioning, or risk of passing through this malfunction product to the customer, it resulted in another risk of, like definitely the impact was in the cost, but also risk of reputation. Okay, so there can be other risks one can see. There can be supply shock, right? So the supply shocks can be seen in the volatile nature of shipping rates. Okay, so we have already seen, this is era of global supply chain, right, where products are shipped overseas. So already we have seen that this shipping rates have been increasingly they are increasing, like from $1,000 per TU is, like this is a 20-foot equivalent unit of a container, right? So which has all in 10 years back, there was a increase, but now till 2018 it has further increased, let's say, to 1,500 per TEU dollars. So this is not the end of story, but this shocks, like, can come in various forms, right? We have seen during the pandemic, during COVID-19 situation of 2 to 3 years, prices were really fluctuating, right? There, it could be the risk of container availability. It was a risk of, like where container was positioned, or whether the risk of, like container allowed to enter into another border. So there were many reasons, like which actually resulted in price increase by 3 to 5 times during 2019 to 2021. So, and this risk resulted in another risk, like because of unavailability of containers, or because of the companies couldn't afford to ship through this so costly containers. Most of the products were lying rotten, at the ports, right? So this are the many examples, like when the products were not able to reach to the buying locations, and such risks, like one must capture, right? So we can see that there can be variety of risks, like first we have seen disruption, fire. So fire could be like because of short circuit, or by a fire could happen because of the climate conditions, or the weather conditions. And other thing we are seeing is supply shocks, right? So oil prices is another thing. Oil prices we cannot see directly linked with the supply related risks, but when we analyze it, it is actually quarter to one third of total cost which is contributed to transportation and distribution related activities. So if any fuel cost will change, if there will be increasing, there would definitely, it would be appearing in terms of cost, and eventually it would hurt the cost of buying a product. Okay, so sudden spikes like crisis in Middle East, that leads to many risks. Would also like to sensitize with the corporate and social responsibility related risk, where environmental sustainability, social sustainability is compromised. Okay, many a times when the companies buy the products from the suppliers, they just forget to check on certain aspects of social sustainability, or like environment related regulations. For example, in the past, we have many reputed global companies, who were not their reputation was tarnished because their suppliers, not the companies, but their suppliers were involved in activities like child labor, right? They were fail in accommodating the safety related norms and guidelines. So very famous example is like what happened in the Rana Plaza fire in Bangladesh. So the Bangladesh is a hub of like textiles. Most of the global companies, they outsource the textile garments related production to Bangladesh. So when the safety in such companies are compromised, such companies are suppliers to big giant retailers, the garment retailers, right, in all across the world. So if this kind of safety norms are compromised, or they are not well accounted by the suppliers, it might result in incidents like fire which has happened in Bangladesh. What is its consequences? Definitely, like it is the major loss. The casualty is the extreme loss one can face, but other than that, the end customers, like they eventually thought of boycotting the products. Okay, so once you boycott the products, it actually hamper the reputation of the company also. So these days, it is very important, and companies are taking extra steps, and they are taking extra efforts in implementing, social sustainability related aspects, and at the same time, conscious enough of adopting environmental sustainability aspects. So this is also, one can also see, the stolen cases, hijacking. Not only it is mostly happens in cargo, but it is equally observable at warehouses, airports, ports, intermodal yards, and when drivers are taking break. So these are the major issues, like which is there all across world. So these are the risks, like you can see if something would be stolen or hijacked, how it would hamper, you know uh, when we would not be able to receive the quantity required, right? Or if full consignment goes missing, that result in huge loss to the buying organization. So these are few examples. There are very few examples. Some more will be uploaded, for your reference. You can see that. So this help us, like, to understand, where the risk can originate in the supply chain, how it can impact, to various organization and supply chain, including the buying organizations, right? And it can impact differently. The duration of risky event can be different, right? So all these observations are very important when one has to analyze the risk.